before we can get to coding, we need to do one more thing. It is called version control or committing your code. Now, think about this scenario. Let's say you have a code base where you have written some code, it is functional, but you are working with a couple of people, maybe a large team, maybe a small team, maybe just one person. Now, think of it in terms of you editing something in the code, and now the new code base should be accessible for both you and the other person working with you. Now, in that case, what people used to do before the invention of Git, which we're going to be talking about in a moment, they used to share their folders, right? So they shared their folders whenever a change occurs in the code base. They used to put the change in some sort of public cloud storage. So people, whenever they want to make new changes, they would have to download the whole code base from that storage, and then they can update or they can work on the updated, up-to-date code base. Now, that is really inefficient because if you're working with a large team, maybe 50 developers, 100 developers, whenever somebody does something to the code base, you have to download the entire code base. And from experience, I could tell you most of these code bases are not light. They are not 2 megabytes, 3 megabytes. They could range from anything in a production ready application. They could be 500 megabytes, they could be 5 gigabytes, they could be 10 gigabytes if it is big enough. So think of it like 500 people working on the exact same code base. When somebody makes a change, all the 500 people have to re-download again and again and again. When anybody makes a change again, you have to re-download, and that's very inefficient. So that's where the idea of version control comes in. And for version control, we're going to be using a software called Git. Now you can read here, Git is a free and open source distribution version control system designed to handle everything from small to very large projects with speed and efficiency. Now, you don't really have to be a master of Git. Git is a very large software with so many commands and so many parts that you currently don't need. But even if you are working alone and you don't work in a team, even if you're a freelancer, you need Git because using Git and GitHub, which we're going to be talking about in just a moment, using these two softwares, these two tools, is how you actually share your code to either your workmates, your coworkers, your team, your development team. For example, for this project, I'm going to be sharing my project here on GitHub, right? So if you go down below in the description and check it out, you should be able to see the GitHub repository for this project that we're going to be doing. And whenever we make changes, it will be updated. And that's another thing with Git. You can commit your code, meaning whenever you make changes, you can then upload those changes to GitHub or Git, right? So after you do that, after you upload it, what will happen is if you make a breaking mistake in one part of your code, you don't have to panic. You can just go back to that version which did not get corrupted, and you can work from there without having any major setbacks. Now let's talk about Git and GitHub. What are the differences? First of all, GitHub came much later than Git. GitHub is actually built on top of Git. So let's think about Git first of all. Git is the system. Git is the system where people actually share their code, they commit their code into a sort of pipeline where everything is being tracked. So it's a tracking system. Now, Git to be able to be shared across many people, because Git itself will be only on your device. To be able to share it, you need to put it onto a repository. Now, a repository is somewhere where your code will be available to people who have access, right? So it's not only limited to your computer or your system. when it is on a repository, anybody which you give access to can go and download the code, and then get the updated code anytime some changes occur. Now, that repository is being provided using GitHub here. Now, GitHub is not the only repository management site or tool. There's actually, I think there's one called GitLab, which is actually free and open source. But for beginners especially, I recommend you use GitHub here. Now, GitHub, typically Git and GitHub is a very heavy software. So you don't really need to know every single command. Like if you go to the commands, there are many commands, like hundreds maybe, and you don't really need to know all of them currently. Most of the things I'm going to teach you in this lecture, in this course, is that you don't really need to memorize anything. Don't fall into the trap of trying to memorize them. But as you work with these tools, you're going to get familiar with the syntax, with the code, with the commands, and through time, you'll know the actual commands that you're going to be using. Because like 80 or 90% of these commands you'll never probably use. But the ones you'll be using, you will be familiar with time. So time is a great teacher. Now to start, you first have to install Git. Now we can see the latest source release, which is the most stable one, is I believe 2.52.0. Now you can install it for Windows, but I already did. You can see I'm on Windows currently. But if you're on Mac, they should have one for Mac as well and for Linux as well. Actually, Git is provided for almost any operating system you can think of, for every uh, even for every Linux distro. So you won't really face any issues from there. Then you would have to go to GitHub and just simply create an account. Now you can see I've already created my account here, and you can see I have some repositories. If I click more, this is actually my secondary GitHub account, so I don't really have many projects here, many repositories, but you can see I have some of them. Now we're just going to be starting today by creating a repository for this astrology sign project that we are doing. So let's start here. Let's go click this new, and you can see here new repository. Let's just click on it. Great. So you see owner, which is my account. I'm the original owner, and I'm going to name this astrology sign. Now, this naming is local, meaning it says astrology sign is available because I didn't create any prior projects with the same name. But if somebody else in the GitHub software ecosystem, if somebody else has this name, it won't really matter because it is local to my account. Okay, so let's go. Description, right? A simple astrology sign, astrology or zodiac, as they say here, zodiac. If I can spell zodiac sign calculator, made with vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. In reality, you don't really need a description. It is completely optional. But it's a good thing to keep track of your projects. As your projects grow, you might not be familiar with them. So it's a good thing to give a short and brief description for your projects. I'm just going to copy this here for later. Now, configuration, right? So these are important parts. Let's talk about them. The first thing is the choose a visibility here, which I'm going to be setting to public. Now, the difference between a public and a private repository is a public repository is something where anybody which has a GitHub account can view your code, your repository. Anybody can just go in there and see your code. Now, if you're working on a project like a monetizable project or a SaaS or something, this might not be the same thing because anybody could copy your code. but so you might want to use private. In the case of private, only you, the creator, and people you give access to are the ones which will have the availability to actually view your code. Now I'm gonna keep it public because I want to share this with all of you, to so you can just go in and just it's called pulling this. So you can pull or fork this repository. Forking means just basically downloading it to your system. So you can download it and play around with it. Unless you actually push it to this repository, the changes won't apply to the code base. So the changes will be local for you. Now, if you push it and I give you access, and if I like say the push is okay and we can add it to the system, to the code base, then uh, the code base will change into whatever you pushed it to, right? But unless I give you access, because I'm the owner here, unless I give it to you, the changes won't really be made, and I'm not going to be allowing any pushes for this repository, basically because I want everybody to have access to the same project which we're going to be building throughout this course. But I really want you to experiment, change the code, and do whatever you want with it. The license here, there are so many licenses: MIT, Apache, GNU, so many licenses. I'm not going to be discussing anything about this. Just know most commonly people use MIT licenses. I'm not going to be making any licenses because I really don't care what you do with it currently. So next thing is the README, which we're going to be adding. Okay, so before we actually start and we actually put our projects onto GitHub and commit it to Git, we need a README. So a README is basically something describing our repository. So think of it as a project description. So I'm just going to create a readme.md. Okay, so what is this? First of all, this README name is the convention. GitHub will be looking for this README in all caps. I'm not sure if you could, okay, maybe you could also put it in lowercase, but GitHub will be looking at it through convention. It is the README with all caps. And the MD file extension is for Markdown, which is a syntactical language that uses different sort of syntax triggers to make a code, just random text code, be more presentable. So I'm just going to be creating this here. Now, I'm not going to be really discussing much about uh, a markdown file. You can study about it on your own, but I'm just going to be sharing with you a quick tips here and there. So how do you start? First of all, I'm just going to provide that same description. Sure, I'm going for first of all, actually, I'm actually getting stuck on my words here. We need a title and a description. So just putting some text here will make it just regular titles. But if I have a hash symbol before some text here, then this text will be a title. And VS Code, you can see, is actually highlighting this, making sure I know that I'm creating a title. So I'm just going to say astrology sign, which is the name of the tool or website we're going to be creating, and simple astrology or zodiac sign calculator made with vanilla CSS. It's the same as the description, obviously. So I'm actually gonna add one more thing here, which will be feel free to play around and experiment with this code base. Okay, great. So if I actually go make one hash, this actually becomes title a head one. If I add two, it becomes a head two, which is just a smaller title. If I add the third one, I believe it changes as well. So there are also so many syntax for Markdown, like there are links and stuff. But I'm not going to be sharing that. It's outside of the scope of this course currently. Maybe in the future we could learn more about this, because this is a very important language. People used to use it for blogs before. CMS has become a large thing, so blogs really use this, and I think this is a very nice way of structuring your regular text. So we created a README file. So now we don't have to make this on. We can just make it off because we already have our README file already pre-created. Great. A git ignore file is actually very important. So this might be a bit weird, seeing this. Like, there is no name, there's just dots extension. Like, you might have seen something like exam.txt, students.txt, uh, something like passwords.txt, but you never seen .txt alone. In this case, we are doing that. Dot git ignore. This is something that Git uses. So you can see, if you're paying attention here, you can see that this is the same logo as for Git, right? So this basically means that everything in this folder will not be read by Git. In other words, it will be ignored by Git. So for example, if I put assets here, now what Git will do is when I'm putting my code on the GitHub, or when I'm putting my code on the system, on the Git sharing system, then the assets folder here will be ignored. It won't be included. Now, if I go readme.md, again, the readme.md won't be included. So here, both of these won't really be included. So this is a very important thing, because sometimes in your code base, you might have a list of passwords. You might have something called modules folder, which are very heavy, like couple of gigabytes worth of folders where you have additional installations that the actual code base doesn't need. Not everybody needs those to be installed, or instead of putting them on GitHub, people should install them themselves on their system. I'm not going to get into that, but no, this is a very important file to make some elements not being committed to Git. Now, I'm going to delete this because we don't really have anything of that source that needs to be hidden. So I'm just going to leave it there. Now, let's go to our repository, and with everything ready here, we can just create. Now, after a moment, you can see I have this sort of page, and you don't really have to be overwhelmed. We just have to do this stuff for our repository to be on GitHub. So great. What do we do? First, let's close everything off here. Let's put this terminal on full flow. Let's go through each line. Echo, you don't need to do this because we already created a README file. We already done this. The code that was showing to you just here, this code is just used to create a readme.md file and add this code to it, which is just a header with the astrology sign to it. A header with the text astrology sign. Great. Then we start with the first code, which is git init. Now you can copy that code into your terminal and just paste and run it, but I really recommend you type it out yourself because it is good practice, and that's how you memorize the syntax. So as long as you're a beginner, I really recommend that you don't copy paste code. Try to at least write it yourself because that's how you memorize the syntax. Okay, so git init, what does this do? This initializes a Git repository. So now this folder will be inside of the Git system. So init stands for initialization. Initialized empty Git repository. Now this is empty even though there are some files because we did not add those files to the system. Now you can see this pops up and the color of the folders and the files changes. This just indicates that we are currently running inside of a Git repository. Next, add readme file. So this add readme file, what it does is it adds the readme file to the system, to the Git system again. But we're not going to be doing it that way, since we want both this and this to be committed to the Git system or added to the Git system. Instead of saying git add readme.md, then again coming back and say git add assets, we're going to be doing that all in one go. Git add hyphen capital A. This means git add all. This basically means add everything to the GitHub system, right? So the Git repository. Add everything except files that are mentioned inside of the git ignore. Now, currently we don't have any git ignore file, so this really won't apply. But know that adding everything, adding all, just totally goes with the git ignore and avoids everything written in that file. So let's just first click enter here, and you can see some warnings, and you can just ignore these. This is just updates, like Git will replace CRLF the next time Git touches it. We don't really need to know this currently. It might seem just you might see this warning and be afraid, but really don't think about it currently. In the future, we might talk about this, but just ignore it for now. Just know that everything has been added currently. So you can see now there's an A, and if you hover over it, actually, VS Code does this nice thing where it shows you that it is added or indexed into your repository. And if I go to any file, you can see this A or index added icon, which shows you that it has been successfully applied to Git. Now, moving on, this git commit, this is very important. This basically means now that we added all of these files, we want to take these files and actually put them inside of the system. Okay, that might seem a bit absurd. Like I just told you that we are putting the files inside the system, but that wasn't the case. I was lying. What this actually does is, what git add does is it puts these files on the system to be observed, meaning Git will now be aware of these files and Git will be observing them. But Git won't really have access to them, or Git won't really have anything to do with them. Just it is known by Git and it is put there on the system. By saying git commit, we are actually committing these files to Git. So everything inside of those files, the content, every new content after every commit, and when you make some changes, you have to make git commit. Because git commit basically means now you have access to these files, take them. Okay, so I'm going to say git commit init initialized repository. Okay. So this /m is a flag. It's called a flag. Basically what a flag is, it's just an extension of a command that adds some information to it. Now this /m means message. So with this git commit, we are adding this message called initialized repository. Now when we click enter, now Git will commit these to the system, will add them to the system. Everything from their content, for the images, the content, every change will be now put to Gits, right? So before, when we said git add, we were just adding these files to be observed, but now we were actually sending them to be stored, right? So that's the best explanation. Observed, then stored. Now you always need a message, because you will be typically consistently adding many commits. Whenever you make changes, you will be adding commits. So by doing that, without any messages, you won't really know which commit is which. So typically in a project, there are hundreds. In a large scale project, there are thousands of commits, maybe even millions in some extreme cases. So this message is very important. So I'm just going to click enter here. Now you can see initialized repository, added every file, and now they are committed. Now 14 changes have been observed because there are 14 files, I think, and initially because there wasn't anything committed to Git, the 14 will be considered as changes. Okay, let's move on. So we need 3 more commands for this whole system to work. The first of those 3 is branch git. Okay, git branch. I think it's B, or is it M? Yeah, it's M. Git branch M main. What is this code? Git branch M main. Now Git will have many branches. A branch is basically an extension of the primary code base used to be handling a different entry to the code base. Let me explain that in easier words. For example, you might be working on software. Say that software is Google. You might be working on Google, and maybe somebody is working on the front end, right? So adding some icons, making it look better, and somebody is working on the algorithm. So you want the person to be able to add the icons and work on the front end freely while you are working on the algorithm. So what you do is you separate or branch the code base into 2 parts, where you could both work on it, and then you can merge the branches later on. Now, we're not going to be talking about merging in this course because it's a bit complicated and out of topic, but probably in the future. But we're going to be creating a main brand because every Git initialization needs a main branch for everything to be, once everything is committed, once everything is just uh, merged, it will be ending on the primary branch, which is the main branch here. Then finally, let's just copy this. If you see, it is https://github.com/my account here /astrology sign, which is the same thing right here. But here the difference is it is a .git extension. So what is git remote add origin, right? So what is this? So git remote add origin means obviously Git only works on our system. So for it to be able to function on other systems, we are putting it onto GitHub. Now, GitHub is called a remote repository manager. So we are adding a remote repository, and its origin is this creative. So we just created this astrology sign repository, right? So we are just setting the public origin here to be this URL, except there's a .git indicating that it's just not a URL, and it's actually a Git file. So this astrology sign.git is actually a file. So yeah, let's just add that. Let's just click enter here. And most of the time you're not seeing any things, but just make sure that to see your code base here, you can see that the blue color has faded away because we are actually putting it, or we committed it, right? So it's called committing. So once you commit, this code will not show you the blue color because there aren't any new changes, right? If there were any changes, like let's say this, I save it, you can see it becomes blue because these new changes have not been committed. Now, if I remove those new changes, and if the original state of the file remains, then VS Code will not show me the changes, the blue color here, because nothing could be added to Git currently because everything's up to date, right? Finally, this is git push u origin main. Now, this is the last time you will be doing this. Any subsequent times after you create a repository, you're not going to use u origin main. You're just going to be saying git push, and it will automatically know that you want to push to the origin, which is this, and the main, which is the main branch. So this basically means git put okay. Let's just clear this sometimes this happens in VS Code. Let's say git push, meaning take the commit. So as long as you don't push the commit is still on your system. But once you push it, then it will become available on the repository and everybody could enjoy it, right? So everybody can see your changes once you push. So before you push, this still using just git, and when you push, now you are talking with your remote repository on GitHub. So git push, then you can see, if I go back, you can see there's the U flag. We basically use the U flag for the first initializing push, because up to this point, Git hasn't really connected with the remote repository on GitHub. So it really hasn't connected. So you have to use this /u, which is very important for your first push. But after that, you can freely just say git push. Again, something on your first initialization is you have to say origin main. We have talked about this. Obviously, the origin means which remote repository are you talking about. And now if you just say origin main, Git won't really know what origin is. But since we already added the origin here, you can see now Git knows that the origin is this. And if you just say main, Git won't really know what main is. But since you already created the branch and switch to the branch main here, Git knows that the origin is this repository, remote repository, and main is a branch, the primary branch on that repository. So that's a lot of talking, but after everything, when we click enter, it will load, it will connect with Git, and it will just send out the files. Here you can see a writing object 14.06 kilobytes, and everything should be ready. Now, to test if this worked, what you can do is very simple. You can just go here and reload the page or refresh, and now it has changed. Now you can see this is the title in bigger form, right? We have our description and some code, just some text here, and you can see initialized repository, meaning this file has been updated on the initialized repository commit. So it hasn't been this isn't really complicated when you think about it. At first it would be intimidating, but after time it's become simple to use Git, so you'll be familiar with it more and more. Now you can also start a GitHub repository, which I'm going to do basically just to show you, which basically means I like this repository, and you can fork it. I cannot fork this because this is my own and I already have access to it, but you can fork it and just use it. Forking basically means taking it onto your system. Now you can clone it. What you need to do to work with this here is clear. You have to clone it. Okay, so you have to clone it. You can just copy this. So use this, right? So get to your terminal, say git clone here. Okay, doing this, what it does basically is it will create a folder called astrology site for you, and then it will get every code that is in this repository into that folder. So that's how you get your code. Instead of just downloading it, unzipping it, this is much easier because you can then push and pull. And there are so many things we can talk about Git, but I think I don't really want to overwhelm you. This video is long enough as it is. So yeah, we discussed about Git. We got our Git repository set up, and now you can access it via the link in the description down below. Thanks for watching, and next time we're going to be starting coding in HTML after everything now has been done. Next time we're going to be starting to go with the code.